I hear that my husband and my daughter, who were supposed to be on their way to my in-laws' house, hadn't arrived yet. Then, my phone started buzzing, and a call from an unknown number had come in.
Mommy, I'm cold.
It was my daughter's voice. I rushed to where my daughter said she was, but there was no sign of Drake. No one should ever leave their daughter alone to go somewhere on their own. Who the hell does that? An incomprehensibly pure fury welled inside me, and I promised myself and my daughter that he would pay for this huge mistake. I made up my mind to throw him into hell, where he'd known how painful it is to feel abandoned, just like his own daughter did. My name is Gia, and I'm 32 years old. I used to live with my husband, Drake, and my daughter Penelope. Penelope is a strong, independent girl who will be in the 3rd grade of elementary school this year. She's independent in the sense that she willingly does things for other people without being told to do them. For example, whenever I come home late from work and find myself at the mercy of a bunch of housework to do, she always takes the initiative to help me. She is my little darling assistant, and I have to say, the speed and the precision of her dishwashing skills is unheard of, truly. I've never seen anyone wash that many dishes in such little time, and with everything looking spotless every time. My husband, on the other hand, behaves around the house though he was actively saying that women belong in the kitchen. He never actually said that, but the way he never offers to help us with anything, and how he just sprawls on the couch is more than enough to imply that he believes so. Why in the world did he grow up thinking in such a way? Without a doubt, it was because of my mother-in-law, Mrs. Dominic. My husband is an only child, but in the eyes of his mother, he is quite literally emperor of the world. Everything about her life revolved around him, and his personal wishes often dictated how his mother would act in a particular situation. In a nutshell, Mrs. Dominic loves her son perhaps too much and spoils him rotten. Mr. Dominic is a workaholic, and he'd been living away from his wife and son for a long time at one point. So for my mother-in-law, she saw a lot of husband in her son, which made Drake an even more important aspect of her life. He may have been a source of comfort to her, but that doesn't mean that he was raised in the best of ways. The mentality that you won't be scolded or criticized no matter what you did, the same mentality that Drake was brought up in, is just not normal.
What's mine is mine, and what's yours is also mine.
I've heard that in some silly cartoon somewhere before, but I can't comprehend the fact that Drake seems to believe that nonsense for real. This was 4 years ago, during the autumn month of October. On the way home from a visit to a shrine to commemorate Penelope's 5th birthday, we, by which I mean me, Drake, Penelope, and her 2 sets of grandparents, went out for a big meal at a Chinese restaurant downtown. Together with my parents, Mrs. Dominic gave me Penelope's present for her 5th birthday. Thank you very much, Mrs. Dominic. I'll take good care of it.
Mommy, what's this?
It's a very nice present for your birthday, sweetie. Grandma thinks you need to have a good future, so let's keep it safe, and we'll save it for the right time, okay?
Yay! A present! Thank you, Grandma! Thank you, Grandpa!
Everyone was smiling and feeling so blessed to have this angel of a girl to be a part of their family, and the atmosphere was very nice. But then, Drake, in that moment of family bliss, said the unthinkable.
Why bother with saving money? You're gonna withdraw it soon anyway.
When we heard these words, we all turned our attention to my husband. I was shocked to hear this nonsense from the man I willingly married. What do you mean when you say I'm gonna withdraw it right away? It's literally Penelope's savings, and you have absolutely no authorization to withdraw it. Neither do I, for that matter.
Oh wait, really? I just think that she doesn't need to spend the money yet. I don't think it's a problem for me to spend it myself.
That's what he said, word for word. And he was smiling all the while, and he just kept on talking.
The other day I had to get some new shoes to buy a pair of shoes I really wanted. So I withdrew $300 from Penelope's savings. Was I allowed to do that, or was it a bad move?
He then goes on to try to cover up his potential crime with an innocent smile. And the person who got furious after hearing this calamity was Mr. Dominic, my father-in-law.
Drake, did you actually willingly extend your hand into your own child's savings?
That's what Mr. Dominic said as he was about to jump him. My mother-in-law frantically managed to keep her husband from reaching her son. As for my husband, he swiftly jolted with a lightness of body that one doesn't usually see coming from an office salaryman working a desk, and literally used me as a human shield. The only person he feared was his father, and when I say feared, I mean downright petrified. While his mother was very lenient with him, his father was apparently very strict. When Drake was in middle school, his father found out that he had been occasionally taking money out of his mother's purse to use whenever he went to spend money with his friends. He still can't forget the fear he felt at the time, and even goes so far as to tell me it was a traumatic experience. Back to the current situation. Considering the fact that this was a celebratory dinner for Penelope's 5th birthday, we felt an obligation to make sure she didn't have a negative experience. Drake was fearing for his life, and Mr. Dominic was just about ready to ruin it, and this created an unhealthy atmosphere among us all. We managed to calm down my father-in-law, called off the dinner, and went home. After getting inside the house, I told my daughter that there was nothing to worry about, and later cooked my daughter her favorite dinner of all time, as she called it, which, surprisingly enough, was my pad thai spaghetti. After putting her to bed, I went back downstairs to have a talk with Drake. How could you do this, Drake? Do you really want to ruin this family, or what?
I only spent $300, Gia. You're gonna tell me that's gonna destroy the life we have. Talk about a stupid exaggeration.
It's not about the amount. I can't live with anyone who spends his daughter's savings for his own benefit without permission. I can't trust you anymore. I want a divorce.
Okay, now that's my actual worst nightmare. Please, Gia, forgive me. I'll pay her back the money as soon as possible. Please. I'm so sorry.
When I thought he was about to kneel on the floor, he went so far as to bow his head so low, his forehead actually touched the floor. Not only once, but again, and again, and again.
I swear on my life and on my love for you and Penelope. I'll never do it again, I promise. I need you guys. You're my everything, please. Forgive me.
All the words uttered from his mouth were selfish, and nothing they said resonated with me in a good way. But even for someone like him, to Penelope, he's her daddy. She is still a little girl, and the thought of her losing her father made me hesitate to divorce him. Besides that, we both had things we wanted to do. My husband is trying to start his own computer class. This was something that had been his dream since before we got married, and I've been supporting him for a long time. Just recently, we'd finally seen a glimpse of what could very well be the realization of his dream, and our lives were becoming pretty exciting because of it. I thought about the situation for a bit, and then I decided to make a proposal to Drake. Can you promise me that you'll do what I say from now on? In this way, I made it seem like I had the authority when it came to Penelope's savings and about money in general. If he ever needed help with money again, or if he had some kind of financial trouble, he would always confide in me beforehand. And I decided to trust my husband's words. 4 years have passed since then. Drake has indeed kept his word. Not only has he never extended his hand towards our daughter's savings again, but in order to open his computer class, he first had to buy the equipment, as well as materials such as textbooks. Combined, it cost him about 20 grand, and he kept his promise in that aspect as well. He also told me everything he was concerned about regarding money, especially about how he wanted to take out a loan for his school. The school that my husband runs is doing well, and this year, we're opening our 3rd branch.
I have to prepare for the opening today. I also have a meeting, so I'm going to be late tonight. You can go to bed before I do, if you want to, honey.
He always told me why he's going to be home late, which I appreciated. But when my daughter overheard him sometimes, she would say something like,
Daddy looks busy with all the work he has to do.
Needless to say, she sounded sad and lonely. More recently, Drake had been working on his days off more and more often, but when it was decided that a new branch was going to be opened within the year, that made him especially busy. Enough so that he hardly came home at all anymore. Around that time, I received a phone call from Mr. Dominic.
Hi, GM, my dear. It's been a while, hasn't it? How's Drake's work? Is he doing well?
Hello, Mr. Dominic. What a nice surprise to hear your voice. Drake's work is going very well, sir. He's currently pretty busy with preparations for the school's newest branch opening this year. Hearing that, he seemed relieved.
Oh yes, I just remembered why I called you. At the end of this year, why don't you come stay at our place for the first time in a while? It's been a while since the wife and I have seen our darling granddaughter in person. The photos you send us show her growing up so fast. I'd very much like to see how she's doing too.
Thank you very much. We'd love to stay at your place, the 3 of us. I told him that, and I hung up the phone after negotiating some initial arrangements.
We're going to stay at Grandpa's house?
Asked Penelope, with a twinkle in her eye. I decided to send an email to my husband, telling him his parents had invited us to their place. He replied quickly, saying he promises that he would be off work at the end of the year. 3 months later, his business was taking off, and normally, work around now would start to settle down enough for him to come back home, at least some days of the week, to spend time together as a family. But he still came home late every day, and he seemed to still be busy about his work. About going home at the end of this year, Drake, think you can really keep your promise?
Yeah, that was the plan all along. I'll be fine, honey, I promise you.
I was relieved to hear that. Actually, I've applied for time off from work during New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, but it looks like we're pretty short on staff this year, so they practically begged me to come in.
I don't blame you, but what about going back to my parents' house?
I'm sorry to ask you this, but do you think you and Penelope could go to the 2 of you?
Okay, that sounds good. I'll call Mom and let her know the situation.
I decided to leave calling my in-laws to my husband. The day of the trip came sooner than I expected, it seemed. Penelope seemed a little sad that I couldn't go with her. I handed her a small drawstring bag I had prepared for her myself. She accepted it, and had a confused look on her face.
What's this, Mommy?
It's a good luck charm that I made for you, sweetie. Whenever you're lost, or whenever you feel like you're in trouble, just open it, okay? Something will come to help you.
Okay, Mommy. Thank you.
I watched them drive off until they were out of sight, and then I prepared to go to work. Later that evening, after I got a good chunk of work done, I went on a 30-minute break, and I decided to call my father-in-law to tell him I couldn't make it. I also felt like I had an obligation to apologize for my absence, so I dialed his number and waited for his answer. Hello? Mr. Dominic? This is Gia. Sorry to bother you. You also invited me to stay over at your place today, but I unfortunately couldn't make it because of work. I'm very sorry. Are Drake and Penelope with you? When I told him that, I could hear Mr. Dominic scratch his scalp. He was silent for a couple seconds before he answered, using the most unexpected words.
Nobody's here, Gia dear. What's going on?
I got very worried very quickly. I told my father-in-law after I called Drake to check up on how things were going. I hung up the phone and proceeded to hurriedly call my husband. But at that instant, my phone started to buzz, and I didn't recognize the number of the caller. There was no name or ID of any sort either. I was anxious to call my husband, but I decided to answer the call. Hello? And then, through the phone, I heard my daughter's voice say, Is that you, Penelope? This is Mommy, sweetie. Is everything all right?
Mommy, I'm so cold. I'm alone, and I'm scared.
That's what she told me. I instantly felt the blood rush away from my skin, and my heart started racing. Penelope, listen to Mommy, okay? I'm here now. Everything's gonna be all right. What's wrong with Dad?
He told me to wait in the car, and then he went away somewhere. He's not here.
Sweetie, do you know where that place is exactly? So apparently, she was in a hotel parking lot. I told her to stay where she is and hung up for an instant to call back my father-in-law. I asked him to head for the hotel, which, based off of Penelope's description, was unmistakably the en route inn downtown. After explaining everything to Mr. Dominic, I went to my boss and explained again. I then rushed to arrive at the hotel, where I was sure my daughter was waiting all alone, cold, hungry. Oh God, just the mere thought of it is making me tremble still. When I arrived at the hotel, my in-laws were already there, waiting for me, sitting on the sofa, with my daughter between them. No sooner had Penelope seen me that she bolted from the sofa, sprinted towards me, and almost tackled me in a hug. Oh, Penelope. Oh, thank God. I cried, knowing that my daughter was safe and sound. I was so scared that something would happen to her. No, please. Perish the thought. Please. I hugged my daughter tightly. After a while, I saw my daughter going through her pockets, trying to find something to show me.
Thank you, Mommy.
And then, she shows me the good luck charm that I gave her as a little present before she went on her little escapade.
When I opened the charm, Mommy, I read what you wrote down, and I could call you.
She told me that her daddy told her to wait in the car while he went to take care of some business. She kept her promise, and she stayed alone in the car for quite some time. But as more and more time went by, the warmth of the car went away little by little, and it being a pretty chilly late night in December, the cold was penetrating her clothes, and she couldn't find a way to warm herself up. She tried using the blankets we kept in the trunk, but even those didn't help much as it got colder and colder. More time progressed, and her daddy never came back, and she started to get very scared. But then, she remembered the charm I had given her, and when she opened it, she found her favorite candy, a letter, and some money. The letter read as follows. I'm sorry I couldn't come with you today, sweetie, but Mommy is always thinking of you, because I love you so much. Whenever you feel lost or in trouble, always call me, okay? And I will always come to help you. And there was my phone number at the bottom of the letter. When Penelope saw what was written, she mustered up all the courage she had to get out of the car and look for a payphone. She found one nearby not too long thereafter, and that's where she called me. Hearing this story, I immediately felt two things. One was awe in my daughter's efforts. In that dire situation, she remained calm and did a very brave thing. She put herself before what her father told her to do, and she used her resources very well to herself out in the best way possible. The second thing that I felt was incomprehensible fury towards my husband. No one should ever leave their child alone to go somewhere on their own. Who the hell frickin' does that? We decided to wait for my husband to come down from whatever business he was attending. Half an hour later, we saw him come out of the elevator into the lobby, arm in arm with a woman I didn't recognize. Drake didn't notice us sitting down on the couches behind him and proceeded to proudly stride to the front desk. When he was finished, he finally turned around, and before him stood his father, his fists at his hips and his sleeves curled up to his biceps. Behind him stood my daughter and I, holding hands, and his mother looking at him with scornful sadness. In an instant, my husband realized what was going on, and he instantly turned ghostly pale. He screamed, shook the woman's hand off of him, and bolted for the exit. My father-in-law gave pursuit, never failing to be mindful of his own surroundings, and chased after my husband. He tackled him just as he exited the building, and while Drake struggled to free himself, Mr. Dominic grabbed him by the arms and held him down so he couldn't run away. The woman catches up with him and started yelling something. I didn't want to take my daughter there, so I told her to wait there in the lobby with her grandma while I handled this. I hurried to where my husband lay, grunting, panting, and occasionally whimpering in pain. I exited the building and was immediately met with 3 people struggling.
What's with you, you old gasbag? Frickin' let go of my darling Drake!
That's what the woman was yelling.
Stop, please, let go of me.
Drake was literally fighting for his breath. His voice sounded like he was about to cry as he squirmed on the ground. Mr. Dominic's grip was strong, though, and even with the woman trying to wrestle him away, he held him down firmly. His face donned the look of the devil itself, glaring at my husband in deadly silence, and he seemed to be waiting for me to come to the scene. As soon as I arrived, the woman started screaming again.
And who the frick are you? Just let Drake go, damn it! I'm calling the police.
The police? Well then, miss, if you want to call the police, go right ahead. And I walked right up to Drake and slapped him across the cheek. What the frick were you doing, locking Penelope in the goddamn car?
No, this is...
My husband was fidgeting like a writhing worm. Mr. Dominic, seeing this, whispered menacingly in his ear.
Drake, you just shut up and stay the frick down.
He grabbed him by the collar, and he put his face really close to Drake's, and he's giving him a murderous glare as he literally picks him up off the ground and sets him down on his knees.
What the frick are you people?
Who are we, you ask? Well, excuse me, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Gia, this gentleman's wife, and this old gasbag, as you called him, is his father. And who might you be?
I'm his girlfriend.
And she's got a wry smile on her face.
You do realize he runs a bunch of computer schools, right? He's a very successful businessman, and a miserable woman like you doesn't deserve such a handsome, high-profile man like him. I mean, just look at you, shabby as a plaid shirt eaten away by moths. You're no fit wife for the boss.
She said that with her arms crossed, and she looked at me like I'm an idiot, from the tip of my feet to the tip of my nose on my face. Oh, am I really? I turned to my husband and decided to ask a question. Am I really as miserable as a wife as this woman says I am? Do I really look that shabby?
No, Gia, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful.
I asked the next question. So, you think I'm finished as a woman, I have no charm left, and you can't bear to be with me anymore. So am I right in assuming you were prepared to divorce me in order to be with her? The woman smiled when she heard these words, but of all goddamn times, Drake actually took this opportunity to plead for my forgiveness. He began to make up excuses as to why he was with another woman.
I don't want to divorce you, Gia. My relationship with Megan here was all just fun and games. I mean, it's like I was just curious about her and thought I could make a small pass at her. Anyway, I only want you to know one thing. I love you, no one else. You're my everything. Please forgive me.
Drake bowed his head low until his forehead touched the ground multiple times, just like he did 4 years ago. The woman beheld this scene, and her face turned pale as she collapsed to the ground. It was as though her entire legs had spontaneously turned to jelly. The elegance and flexibility of her fall was honestly impressive. What do you mean? You were just curious about her. Do you really think that excuse is gonna work, given the situation?
I admit I had an affair, but I just didn't mean it to be for real. I swear, I didn't mean it, so yeah, it was just a fling.
Oh, I see. So you think it's all gonna be okay if you had an affair, if you never meant for it to be real? You honestly believe you'll be forgiven of the pain and sadness you caused because of your selfish actions? Don't be so stupid.
No, that's not what I mean.
Then what the hell do you mean? If you think you're done with me as a woman, then you yourself ain't looking too shabby there, Drake Dominic. Lest we forget, you also gained a few years since I first met you. You not only failed as a man and a husband, you've also failed miserably as a father. When my husband heard this, for some reason he reopened his mouth and started to take the offensive.
And how the hell did I freaking fail as a man, husband, and father, damn it? I kept my promises to you, and I never touched Penelope's savings, and I confided in you whenever I had to think about money. I even asked for your permission to take out a loan to start up my initial computer school. Besides, I never promised you that I wouldn't cheat on you.
My husband, who was breathing heavily, went on accusing me of implying things I never did say, and therefore, I was guilty of entrapment and other bullshit like that. But it wasn't me who reacted to this. Mr. Dominic took the initiative and conjured up a whirlwind of rage and shame. He then proceeded to slap my husband's face back and forth. The sound was frankly agonizing. It echoed throughout the glamorous front entrance of the hotel. Mr. Dominic kept at it until Drake's face was swollen beyond all recognition. When he was satisfied, he then bowed his head to me several times before dragging my husband to their car. The three of them, the mumbling Drake, the upset Mrs. Dominic, and the furious Mr. Dominic, left together. I took my daughter and went back to my parents' house and celebrated the new year without any further problems. A few days later, still during the New Year holidays, I received a thick envelope in the mail from my father-in-law. Inside was a large amount of proof of my husband's infidelity. Everything from how they initially met and how far the relationship went was all there, in exquisite detail. I decided to give the contents to a lawyer, whom I also hired to make arrangements for the divorce and the alimony and child support. After that, my divorce with Drake was finalized, and I was able to get the alimony and child support of the amount I initially desired. Apparently, the woman whom he was having an affair with, whose full name was Megan Akia, worked for one of my husband's subcontracting companies. They've done business together on multiple occasions, and this eventually flowered into an affair. Of course, I sent a letter of content to her company with full disclosure of her affair with my ex-husband, and I filed a demand for alimony. Evidently, the company and her colleagues, friends, and family all lost their trust in her as a human being, and she has lost her place at the company. However, she begged the company to keep her employed in order to pay me alimony, and as of now, she works a window side job of miscellaneous chores around the office to pay me what she owes. As for Drake, the news of him divorcing his wife because of his adultery was leaked to his business partners, and as a result, their contracts with him were terminated, one after another. Drake's company went bankrupt, and within a few short weeks, he'd lost his job as president of a business taking off and reverted back to a part-timer. Because of this, I was afraid he wouldn't be able to keep up with his alimony payments, but that fortunately only lasted a brief instant, because my in-laws assured me they would personally take care of him until his debt was paid off in full. After the whole incident, Penelope and I moved to a new place, an apartment situated near my parents' place. The other day, I gave my daughter a cell phone for her 10th birthday.
Thank you, Mommy. Now I can talk to you anytime.
I love her smile so much. It's amazing how one small thing that your own child does can conjure up so much positive emotion, and I'm gonna make sure she can keep smiling for as long as I can. And in order to do that, I'm going to spend lots of precious time with her and do my best to raise a smart, beautiful, independent woman with a lot of courage and a lot of common knowledge, unlike someone we won't mention anymore. I vow, with all my heart, that I'll do what I can to make our family as happy as can be, and to provide Penelope with the bright future she deserves. Wish me luck.